So hey everybody, it is Erin and welcome back to part 2 of my Brutus Monroe ink lab. Part 1, we tested the inks, and these are the 8 inks we are working with. We're working with the Brutus Monroe Premium Chalk Ink, Distress Ink, StazOn, a Dare to Be Artsy Premium Ink that I happen to have, the little dollar spot or dollar bin, now I think they're $1.50 from like Joann's and Michael's, these are the Studio G, color blocks, and then 2 different Prima inks. This is the Quick Dry Fluid Chalk ink and the Resist Chalk Edger. These are all in the color of either orange or red, and I would do these in red, but I don't have red. This one is starting to lose a little bit of its pigment, but it's still working, it still functions. It's just a little bit fainter than it normally would be. So just kind of keep that in mind. It's not the powerfulness of this ink that we're looking at, it's whether or not it does what it's supposed to do. So video 1, we tested these on white paper, regular cardstock, glossy paper. We saw how well you could watercolor with them by combining it with water, and also how well it held up to using various markers. So if you haven't checked out video 1 yet, go in the corner, look in the little iCard, and take a look at video 1. For all of my series of videos, this is number 2, there is a giveaway. My giveaway is 4 lucky people are going to win a set of 4, and this is one example of the set of 4. There's 3 others. This is the winter season, but there's also summer, spring, and fall. And 4 people are going to win a set courtesy of Brutus Monroe, shipped directly to them. All you need to do is comment on this video and say that you'd like to win and subscribe. That's it. You can also comment on video 1. And if you already have commented on video 1, you can comment on video 2 for a second entry into this particular giveaway. So for each video, you can leave a comment, and if you've already subscribed, just let me know. It's as simple as that. Brutus Monroe has also given me a coupon code for 20% off of any of their inks, whether it be a chalk ink or a chalk re-inker. They're all 20% off, and all you need is code right here at the bottom, Erin Reed, ERINREED. All one word, all lowercase, super simple, and it gives you 20% off of anything that says chalk ink. Pretty awesome. So today, what are we going to test? Today we are testing how all of these inks, I'm just moving them off to the side now, how all of these inks are going to hold up to 4 different types of surfaces. We are going to test them on, let me move them all over. We're going to test it on fabrics. This is just a cotton fabric. Very easy. I've cut them down into small squares so we can fit them and you guys can see them on the paper. We're going to test it on burlap. We are also going to test it on acrylic. This is an acrylic piece of plastic. So this would also work for other plastics as well. Just keep that in mind. And then we're also going to test this on glass. This is a glass piece, and we're going to see how well it holds up to all of these different materials. So let's get started. Let's start off with our flexible materials first. All right, I'm going to stamp every single one of these. I'm going to speed through this, and then we're going to talk about it. So I have my little labeling chart here. Between each of the stamps, I'm going to put a little bit of the Brutus Monroe Squeaky Clean in here. I'm just going to do a few sprays. And between each stamp, and I'm using this is the December Stamp Club. Stamp Club is really simple. All you need to do is sign up and you get a stamp sent to you for $5. Includes shipping, the whole thing. Plus, being a member of the Stamp Club gets you a discount off Brutus Monroe all the time. So this is a pretty cute one, champagne bottle with a little champagne glass. So I'm using the champagne glass because it's nice and small and it fits on all my things. I'm not 100% worried if I can't get the entire image. Mostly I'm worried about just the top. I'm looking to see how well does the stamp work on these materials. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure this is nice and clean. And I just have an old, I'm kind of using up some old stuff. Make sure I get any kind of residue off or old inks off of there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 2, and we're going to start off with the regular fabric. And I'm going to stamp it twice. The reason for stamping every image twice, or every ink twice, is one of it we're going to test how well, and I'm going to test it right away, does it maintain on the fabric right here, because maybe you're good, you're done, you want to stamp it, it's not something you're going to wear, it's just going to go on something that's kind of temporary. And then we're going to heat set one, and we're going to test both using water. So what if you put it in the washing machine? What if you sprayed it with mist or something like that, and you wanted to see how well, after you stamped on a material, would it hold true? So that's what we're going to test there. So for every single one of these inks, and I'm going to show you the first one. We'll do the Brutus Monroe together. I am not doing a second generation stamp on any of this. I'm doing a first generation for the whole thing. And I'm going to make sure it is off so I don't get my paper, because some of the stamps are just not going to quite fit. So this one's a little bit short. But again, I'm not too worried about that. Now, what I want to do is I want to test, does it smear as soon as I stick it on? And this one does not. It is on there and it is good. I'm going to do a second one. First one's going to be exactly the same. Just so I have a second one. One I'm going to heat set, one I'm not, and we're going to test both by spraying them with water and see what happens. I'm going to do the same thing for all the others. Speeding it up, I'm going to clean my stamp, blot it, just to make sure I get any other residue off. I don't want to transfer from one ink to the other. Make sure I stick my lid on, and then I'm going to try the next one, which is Ranger. And I'm going to go down the line, and I'll speed this up for you. All right, so here we go. Across the board, they all did fantastic. Only one smeared, right? Actually, two of them. Two of them smeared right away just by using my finger across the edge of the ink, and that was the two Primas. What we're going to do now is we're going to take one from each of them, and I'm actually going to transfer it onto another sheet so I don't forget which is which, because yeah, after a while they all kind of look the same. We're going to take one from each. I'm going to do the one that I didn't smear. It's that one. Let's do the second one. Just really quickly, I'm just going to take my heat gun. I don't want to overset it because I don't want to burn the material. You could also put the material in the dryer to heat set it. And depending on what material or what surface you have to heat set, you can also use the oven. So those are those capabilities. I am just going to use my heat gun for this, but I'm not going to overheat it to the point where it makes the material brown. I'm just going to make sure that the ink gets set in. And so I'm going to do that for all of these. All right, I went to the same point with all of them. The material started to kind of pull and kind of squish together. As you can see, it kind of warped up a little bit, and it's just the nature of this particular material that I happen to pick. But it's the same for all of them. This one I went a little too far, and it got a little bit dark, like I kind of melted the material a little bit. So I wouldn't necessarily use this material on the wash. But I'm gonna let these dry, and we're gonna test the ones I did not heat set against water. All right, now this is just regular old tap water, nothing fancy, and we are going to take each one of these and test them. Now, none of these have been heat set. They are completely in the raw, and there's a good chance they could do something. Let's see. So this one's actually not doing too bad. It is purely air dried. This is the Brutus Monroe. It's a tiny bit smearing, but it's actually not too bad. There's a little bit of smearing. It's getting a little bit of a tint on the material, but it's holding up fairly well. Now for the Distress Ranger. There it is. It's activating. It's starting to kind of tint around. You can definitely tell that this one's a little bit more muddy than the other one. Stays on. It's holding true, fast with color, and it's not blending. It's doing a great job. Let me go back and really kind of, I'm really pushing hard. I'm kind of ripping it apart. And it's doing a really good job kind of maintaining a little bit of smearage, but not too bad. This one started activating with the water quite a bit. And look at that, it is completely smearing. Haven't heat set it though, but this is just something like, what if you went and you stamped on the fabric for, let's say, a mini book or something, and you wanted to then do a little bit of a light spray over top, but you don't want to heat set that or whatever it may be. But you know, these ones are kind of blending, they're fading in color. These two are still, because this was already faded to begin with, these ones are holding true even after spraying water, but still having their image pretty good. This one's smearing too, but the image is still pretty clear about what it is. Doing too bad of a job. It's smearing some. It's not staying hold true, but it's there. See? And then we'll do this one. It's actually bleeding more. The more it kind of sits, the more the color kind of bleeds out. You can kind of see that it's starting to bleed out a bit more. There we go. So what are our results? Pretty much all bled a little bit of color, every single one of them, with the exception of these two. The StazOn actually bled a little less color than the Brutus Monroe, but all the other ones bled some form of a color in some way. So, just something to keep in mind. This is without any heat treatment. This is just exactly how they were. So if you were going to do a mini book, like I said, and you were going to spray, you were going to stamp on something, then you wanted to add a mist on top of that, I think either of these two would be fine, and you would be able to see your stamp without it bleeding all over the place by just adding a spray mist on top, and it wouldn't reactivate that ink horribly without having to heat set prior to that. All these other ones, look how much they're bleeding. And yes, I did manipulate it, but as the book is going to get turned, it's going to have some issues. So just something to keep in mind. All right, now let's test the heat set ones. Same idea. So all of these have been heat set. We're going to see how well they hold up. 4 or 5 sprays, same thing. Pull, doing a great job. Now, some of these might do a better job because they've been heat set. Oh, but this one's already starting to bleed. Look at the Distress ink. See how it's already pulling into the fabric? Even though it got heat set like the rest, it didn't make it. This one's holding its image really crisp. Let's see about StazOn. I bet it would do the same thing. Yeah, it's not going anywhere. The heat set really, even though it worked before you heat set it, it really just nailed it. When you heat set it, it could probably, oh yeah, here goes the Dare to Be Artsy. You can really tell it's already starting to kind of bleed with color. You can almost tell right away as soon as you spray it with water what's going to happen. Studio G, on the other hand, is not doing too bad of a job with the heat set. That's pretty cool. The color blocks, oops, same thing. It's doing a pretty good job. A little bit of smearing at the top. Yeah, it's pulling even more. As it's sitting, it's spreading. So some of these, like look how much this one spread. It really went. This one's starting to go more. This one's starting to spread more. So far, these three are holding pretty crisp to their image. So think about if you had a cotton t-shirt, or you had, you wanted to do like a book bag or something, or you wanted to stamp on a mini book, but you don't want the colors to move anywhere. This would work. This one, let's see, a little bit, not too bad. It kind of tinged it, but the image is staying pretty clear and crisp. It's not bleeding like it was before, so the heat set worked for this one too. The other one really made it move. See, look, this one's even moving more. All right, so let's take a look again where we're at. So the Brutus Monroe, heat setting it made it as clean and crisp as if you had just stamped it. And as it dries, it does not seem to be moving anywhere. Even the without heat set version did a pretty good job. Both Rangers just moved, and even the heat set one did a bigger movement than the one that I didn't heat set, which I think is kind of funny. StazOn did great, even same thing. Clean, crisp image. So the Brutus Monroe acts so much like a StazOn in this particular instance, but it has the quality of the Ranger Distress with other stuff. So it really is kind of a blend between these two inks and this one ink, which is kind of cool. Dare to Be Artsy moved on both. The Studio G ink actually didn't do a whole lot of movement on the heat set, but it did on the plain. Both the color blocks moved. As time went on, it moved even more. The Prima Quick Dry moved a ton on the non-heat set, but when I heated it, now it's pretty crisp. It's not a white material behind it. This one's still staying very white, but this one's kind of turned into a muddy brown around the outside. So it did bleed some, not the image, but the ink kind of went into the fabric, which is interesting. And then these ones, they did pretty good. This one kind of tinged the fabric around it, but it did stay pretty true to its color, and it didn't bleed too much. So both the Primas, when you heat set them, did an okay job, but the material around kind of turned the color of the ink. So if you want to keep a nice, clean, crisp image behind it, either Brutus Monroe or the StazOn is your one to do. So all different types of cottony fabrics. I think this is work fantastic. So think about if you're going to do towels or things like that. If you wanted to ink on the edge of a pot holder, you want to stamp on a t-shirt, you want to stamp on a backpack, I think all these, but you got to heat set it. So your dryer would be a good place to go, and always test your fabric first, because sometimes the ink may be good, but the fabric may be a problem. So just kind of double check, maybe take a snippet of that fabric, just like I did here, and just test it out, see how well it does. This time we're going to test everything the same idea on the burlap. So I'm going to take the same stamp, the same process. The Brutus Monroe again, number 1. Just doing the same order I've always done. I'm going to do the same process we just did. I'm going to stamp. I don't know why I covered that up. Stamp on both. Again, because this is a lumpier, bumpier material, it's not going to be as crisp of an image. You're going to get some loss of detail. And now I'm going to rub my finger. A little bit of a movement, but not too bad. Go ahead and lay that down. And I'm going to do the same thing for all the other ones. Same process, just speeding it up. All right, so I'm done stamping, and same as before. The ones that kind of did a little bit of movement are down here, the Prima ones. Brutus Monroe, a tiny, tiny bit. All the rest did a really good job of stamping, stayed. I'm going to transfer them again, just like last time, and split them up. Treat them with heat on one, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that, and then the other one we're going to spray. So when heat set, burlap, especially this light color, likes to kind of burn a little bit. So I went to the point where I just started seeing a hint of it kind of changing and almost burning the burlap, and then I quit and went to the next one. So let's test it out. Same as before, plain old tap water, spray it 3 or 4 times, and let's see how it does. This one's holding pretty darn true. That one's pretty good. Let's see how it sits. Sometimes it'll bleed after it sits. This one's already starting to move, you can see it. Trying to blend in the color, it's gotten all muddied. StazOn should hold nice and true. Doing great. You dare to be artsy. You can already see it. You can almost tell that it's going to move because when you spray it, it gets bright. When it doesn't change color per se, it's going to be pretty good instant that it's going to stay put. It's almost like it's not reactivating. The reason why it gets brighter as it sits is because it's not reactivating its color, which is kind of cool. That's interesting. That one stayed put when we heat set it, but this one, it's moving all over the place. It does not like the burlap. You know, it's a different kind of material. So, you know, on denim would be a whole different, it is cotton. So, but you know, they're all different. So I would definitely test whatever material you're going to put it on. You know, I've just done 2 tests, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, so across the board, how did it do? This one stayed true. StazOn did great. The Distress muddied up. Dare to be Artsy muddied up. Color Box did a really good job of staying pretty clear. The Studio G almost kind of wiped off in a way. And both of these ones smeared. The Resist one, not as bad, but I can't even tell that that's a cup anymore. It's completely lost. And I could tell, I mean, when it was initially stamped, I mean, here you can see when it was initially stamped, you could tell it was a cup. Same with this one. It's almost completely faded away till it just looks kind of like a red blob. So the ones where I can tell they're still cups and pretty a clean, crisp image, again, keep in mind, this should be darker, but it's my ink is fading. But I can see from here that there is a cup, it's just light, but it started off light. So keep that in mind. But these 3 are pretty darn good. This one is definitely a crisper image than the Color Blocks, but it didn't bleed. It's just the nature of the ink itself. It looks like it's almost like it leaves a darker, fatter impression than the Brutus Monroe. I don't understand that, but there you go. Okay, shifting this off to the side, let's try the same scenario, but these ones are not heat set. So let's see what happens. And I'm going to realign them up here with this guy. So I'm just going to pull these off. and lay them next to their counterparts over here. So again, not heat set. I've just let them dry for a little bit on their own. So a little bit of movement, but not bad. I can still tell it's a cup. This one's completely faded. I can't even see the detail on it anymore. I mean, you can tell there's something coming off of it, but here I can see more detail. It just moves. Oops, wrong one. StazOn should be able to keep, should act the same as the Brutus Monroe. Those are both very similar and they did a great job. The Dare to be Artsy, it's going to move. I can already see it. It's moving. It's acting just like it did on the canvas, on the cotton fabric. It's almost like this is a burlap and that's more like a canvas. That's the best way to describe it, because it is a canvas. The other one we used. Yeah, this one's doing the same thing. It's like completely fading off. I can't even tell what's there anymore. It's just it's muddied itself up. This one again, it's holding true. It's not blending its ink, but it's not as crisp of an image. It just, like I said, it seems like when you stamp on it, it almost is like a fatter color of a stamp. This one's blending everywhere. It just looks like a big blob now. If you were going to do burlap, then this is, I would either pick the StazOn, the Color Blocks is not too bad, or the Brutus Monroe. Those three are the #1 picks in terms of, even with or without heat setting, all three of them did a good job. They definitely held their color better and didn't bleed as much when you heat set it just for a few seconds. Again, you could throw it in the dryer, depends. I would test burlap first to see how your dryer holds up to it, or you could use your heat gun like I just did. You could even try the oven just for a few minutes in your oven. I have not tried the oven method, I've just heard that it works. So both fabrics have held up well to some inks, but not to others. All right, so what I have here is I have a piece of acrylic. This is just a standard sheet of plastic acrylic that you could use for all kinds of stuff. I'm sure you could use a thinner version, but I'm going to test this as my plastic. So I'm going to do the same format, but this time I'm going to stick this underneath and we are going to stamp directly on, and I'm just going to do one. We're going to stamp, and for part of the image I'm going to use my finger and see how well it smears or not smears right after stamping it, and then we're going to heat set and we're going to test the other side to see how well it stamps or not stamps. I will say for glass and plastic, you do need to heat set it a little bit longer than you would a material. The material, I only kept it on maybe about 5 or 6 seconds per one. This one needs a little bit longer for it to set on. That's been my experience. So let me show you what I mean. What we're going to do is we're going to take our ink, same process, clean off my stamp. When you're stamping on a plastic or a glass, that you don't move your stamp around, because what can happen is you can smear. So see how it smears? It just pulls right off. And that's for any ink, because this is a very slick surface and you want to be careful with that. So I'm going to bring this a little closer to me. Come in, down, lift clean up, and you're going to do it. If you don't like it, try it again. The beauty of these inks is that it will clean off with rubbing alcohol, and I'll show you that in a minute too. All right, so first step I'm going to do, and I'm just going to test the bottom of the stamp. So I'm going to run my finger, and look, it smears right off. Right away on plastic, it will smear, but let's test the other ones to see how they do too. So for the rest of the inks like before, I'm going to speed this up and test it, and you can see, because I'm going to be testing it on the bottom of the wine glass. All right, so let's take a look at what we've got. So every single one of these, after I stamped, I take my finger and I swipe it, it comes off. It's one of the natures. Every single one of them did that, because they all need a little bit of something to help them set into such a shiny and glossy finish. But take a look at the Ranger ink. It's almost repelling it. It doesn't even want to stay, and the image is already starting to get a little bit kind of muddied looking because it's kind of pulling up. All the other ones are looking like they're holding true. This one's kind of doing the same thing. It's kind of pulling up a little bit. But let's heat set all of these now. All right, I'm letting this kind of cool off. It's still a little warm from the heat. It's not too bad. Basically, I kind of went to the point where I could see that the plastic was starting to kind of heat up and move, and that's when I went to the next section. And so I didn't want to completely warp this plastic. I think it really would end up having a problem, but it's gone back to its original form, which is nice. It's nice and flat. For a while, it was kind of raised up and bubbled in the middle, but we're good now. All right, so let's test all of these. Look at that. It pulled right off before and is now set and good. Here is the Ranger, and it is smearing all over the place. This is not meant to stick on plastic even after heat setting. Plus, the image, even before I started moving, it was gotten so faded and weird, it didn't even want to do anything. The StazOn is holding true. It's doing exactly what it should be doing. The Dare to Be Artsy, up here, I'm starting to get a little bit, oh, it's kind of coming off. Oh, look at that. It's coming straight off. It doesn't even want to stay. Here is the Studio G chalk ink. It's moving now. I'm pushing hard. I'm going to clean my fingers just again so you can see. I'm just wiping it off. I really want to show you guys. I'm moving this as much as I'm moving this, and it's pulling off, and it's completely off smeared this one. So it's not that I'm trying not to do it. I'm really testing every single one of these. Here is the color blocks, and again, look, it's coming right off. It's peeling. Prima Quick Dry, doing the same thing. And I heat set all of these the same. And then here it is. It's the only two that will stick to plastic, and they all work the same. You have to heat set them are the Brutus Monroe and the StazOn. None of the other ones, they all smeared right off. It either warped, like I could do this lightly and it would be fine, but over time this would have a problem. Let's say you made a boo-boo, you heat set it, or you're done with it. You want to clean it off with the plastic. Look, it comes right off. It cleans right off. And this is just plain old rubbing alcohol. So even though this is heat set completely with my finger, it'll come clean with rubbing alcohol. It's the only thing that's going to deactivate it. Let's take a look at the StazOn. Same thing, it's cleaning it right off. See, there goes the bottom of the stem of the glass. Now you have a cup. So if you made a mistake in any way, shape, or form, or you're done, or maybe it's something you just don't want to have that stamp on, the rubbing alcohol is going to remove it. And because everything else has gotten cleared off with that, I mean, look, it's just wiping clean off. It's completely removing it with all the other ones. So one thing to also keep in mind, if you're going to test on something like acrylic or something, maybe it's something that's going to end up getting wet, and you want to know that it's going to hold up to wetness. So we already know all these other ones aren't, but I'm going to do a quick spray. I mean, you already tell. Some of these are reactivating with the water. These both were completely reactivated with the water, so it means they're going to wipe clean. This guy, look at that. It's on there, not too bad. Completely reactivating with the water. Not horrible, but it's still smearing, you can see. And this one's completely reactivating. And these guys are just turned into a hot mess. They did not want to stick to the plastic at all. They're not meant for a plastic in any way, shape, or form. So just kind of keep these in mind, that if you also wanted to make sure that your acrylic or your plastic or whatever it is that you stamped on, the image does not come off, because you can get it off. If you want it to be a permanent forever, you need to put some sort of sealant on top of it. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to reactivate, but you do want to make sure that you put some sort of glaze. There's lots of options out there. There's spray sealers. There's all kinds of stuff. So just kind of keep those in mind, that if you didn't put something on top, it will move. I am kind of surprised at the little cheapy dollar ink did a not too bad of a job of sticking on and staying put. It's nowhere near as crisp as his image as these guys, but it's not too bad. So keep that in mind. All right, so here's another surface. So we're going to do the exact same process as we did before. I'm going to clean my stamp off to make sure it's all nice and clean from any previous inkage. I'm going to do the same thing we did on the last round, where I'm going to ink up my stamp, and I'm going to test it right after I stamp it again. Clean, crisp image, straight down, push, lift up, and there we go. Test, smears right off. Bet you anything it's going to do with all the other ones, but we're going to test it anyway. Glass is a less porous than a plastic, I think. Pretty sure that's the case. So you're probably going to need to heat, you're probably going to need to heat set this a little bit longer. Look, it already smeared off. We already know the answer to that one. Than with the plastic. So we will heat set these. I'm going to test, and instead of waiting for you to see, because you're going to see right away. I'm going to go ahead and stamp and go ahead and heat set all of these, and then we'll test the whole thing. Okay, so I heat set these for a little bit longer, and I did let it kind of cool down because glass gets pretty darn hot. There's still some warm places on this. I mean, I can definitely feel there's heat still in there. So let's test it. Okay, running my finger. It's on. Look at this guy. So far, so good. It's not moving. Stays on. It's doing pretty good. Dare to be artsy, moving all over the place. Chalk ink, oh look at that. It wants to stick to plastic, but not to glass. The color blocks, so far so good. Oh, Prima Quick Dry, smeared everywhere. And same with the Prima Resist. Did not want to hold true. Okay, let's test our water theory. I'm gonna spray one little spray on each of these and see how we go. So for every single one but the Stays On, it reactivated it completely from when I sprayed it. This one's completely gone. Look at all that. I had one little finger. It's completely pulling up. And now it's already gone. Dry my fingers off. Let's test the Stays On. Oh, well, look at that. So a little bit. It's not reacting very well to plain old water on the glass. So it didn't pull off when you first put it on. I mean, even the Stays On's pulling off with the water. So before you do anything, if you're going to run it through the dishwasher, you're going to have to put some sort of sealant on there, because even then with the Brutus Monroe and the Stays On, it heat set, it stayed. It was not rubbing off with my finger, but as soon as it didn't activate with water, but it's definitely rubbing off with water. So you would want to put a clear coat varnish of something on just to make sure it didn't go anywhere. So good news to know. So that is our glass. All right, so we are done. We have tested a cotton fabric, so we did like a burlap, we did a canvas, and canvas is great for all kinds of stuff. That's the cotton fabric that we were testing. We've done acrylic, which plastic, and then we've done glass. And glass is probably very similar to porcelain, so if you're gonna do a mug or something, this has probably got the very similar qualities to that. So again, a mug is something that's gonna get wet. You wanna make sure you put a sealer. I would not put it on the inside, I would put it on the outside of the mug. So don't forget, there is the giveaway. The information for the giveaway is down at the bottom. Hit the More button. All you need to do, though, and you have a chance to win a 4-pack of the Brutus Monroe inks. There are 4 winners. All you need to do is say that you would like to win the prize and tell me that you are a new subscriber or an existing subscriber. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. I would love some subscribers. The giveaway is going to happen as soon as I hit 1,500 subscribers. Getting there. So tell your friends, pass it on, because the sooner I hit to 15, the sooner we have some winners. And don't forget about the coupon code Erin Reed. Thanks so much. Bye.